So on the eve of whatever the hell this is, I just wanted to tell one of my favorite stories from history that's oddly appropriate at the minute. So let's talk about how William Henry Harrison, the 9th President of the United States, basically talked himself to death. Here's what happened. It's March 4th, 1841, Harrison's Inauguration Day. He's 68 years old, which is ancient by 19th century standards, and he's just been elected on this whole big, masculine, tough guy image, right? It's freezing cold in D.C. The weather's garbage. It's wet and windy, but to stick it to the haters, Harrison decides to double down on looking strong and forgoes wearing anything but his shirt. And then he goes on to deliver the longest inaugural address in U.S. history, over 8,000 words, clocking in at about 2 hours. So with no amplification, no coat, in the bitter cold, 2 hours of basically yelling at everyone. By the time he's done, the crowd's frozen solid, but he's feeling pretty great, kind of riding high on that adrenaline, and Harrison goes off and he parties hard. And not long after the inauguration, Harrison catches a cold. That cold turns into pneumonia, and boom, he's dead after just 31 days in office. So yeah, longest speech, shortest presidency. Real trade-off. Now, historians, of course, like to argue. They love to argue about whether it was actually the speech that killed him. Some think it might have been bad DC drinking water, which is fair. It's the 19th century, and plumbing was a bit sketchy. But let's be honest. The guy stood in the freezing cold for 2 hours with no coat at 68. You don't need to be a doctor, right? Harrison's death also had some surprising consequences. He was the first president to die in office, and no one really knew what to do. Some people thought Vice President John Tyler could just act as a placeholder until a new election, but Tyler insisted that he was the president now, and that kind of just set the precedent for the line of succession that we use today. And then there was the political fallout. Harrison's death kind of fractures the Whig Party, which eventually falls apart, which opens the door for the rise of the Republican Party and its anti-slavery platform. And meanwhile, now President Tyler, who supports slavery, kind of pushes these policies that deepens the divide between the North and the South, which kind of all adds to the fuel to the fire that eventually explodes into the Civil War. And here we are now, with an ancient, highly divisive, bloviating, macho-obsessed Republican president about to take office in a highly divided country, moving his speech indoors because of the cold.